Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Animal Communication or Connections from Coast to Coast. I'm Mary Beth and I'm representing the East Coast. I'm a physio, a healer, an animal communicator, and I just love connecting people with their animals. I'm welcome here with Denise.
Thanks. I'm Denise Dunleavy. I'm representing the West Coast out of Portland, Oregon, and I am an intuitive animal communicator and teacher. And I love helping people connect with their pets and also teaching them how they can communicate with their animals themselves.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Good to see you, Denise. One of my passions is also being a physical therapist and also I like to say I'm the woo PT because I believe that we are more than just our body. And as much as we've been talking about symbolisms in the past couple of episodes, I'm reminded that a lot of times our symbols come through the body. And so I'd love to dive in to how we receive some of that message, some of those messages.
That's so interesting because we as animal communicators all get messages in different ways. And it's hard for me to explain to people sometimes because it comes in, sometimes I hear things, sometimes I see things, but sometimes I just feel it in my body. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Exactly, exactly. I love it, especially because sometimes we'll have information or people ask us medical stuff. We are not vets, but we will get information on their body or how they're feeling, or just like you said, just different symbols through our bodies. So yeah, let's dive in and let's explore this one today.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was first learning animal communication and someone told me that sometimes they feel things. And I thought that is so cool. I wish that that would happen to me. And it has happened. It took a little while. So it took some practice and working on that skill. But I have a great example where a friend of mine texted me and said, "Oh, can you check in with my dog?" And I knew something was wrong, but I was busy with something and I said, "Okay, I'll do it in a little bit." And while I was finishing up what I was working on, my left ear started to hurt. And I thought, that's really weird because it came out of nowhere. And the longer it went on, the more I thought, is this mine or is it something else? And so I finally just texted my friend before I had even tried to communicate with her dog and said, I'm feeling a pain in my left ear. Does that make any sense to you?" And she said, "Oh, the dog has had an ear infection in the left ear for the last few months. It's been chronic." And so that let me know that it was bothering the dog at that point. And then once I acknowledge it, it goes away. So it's their way of communicating this through our own bodies.
Yes. Oh, totally. And unlike you, I think really coming from a background of physical therapy, body work, and manual therapy, this has been something that I've kind of felt always, but just coming at a different angle and not really realizing that it was animal communication until I kind of went into my classes and kind of honoring the gift of communicating. I didn't realize that the animal was trying to communicate. I would just often go in and feel, oh, the pain or the issue is in the shoulder, or oh, the pain or issue is in the stifle, or different things like that, because I would physically feel the pain. And like you said, the important thing is that it would go away, because I would find a lot of times, either working with an animal, or sometimes even humans, I will feel something. I'll be like, all right, why do I have shoulder pain? Why is this hurting? And then I'll be like, once I address it with the being, it's like, oh, okay, it's gone now. And so that's what really has taught me, and kind of how to recognize when is this my issue and when is this the being's issue.
Absolutely. I'm sure that you have been doing this longer than you realized. That it sounds like you have been feeling these things in your body, and you are probably even more in tune with whoever you are working on than you even realized.
It's amazing. It's amazing a lot of times, and I think for us, and really a lot of people, even just something with animal communication, is these are gifts that we're born with, and it takes honoring them and practicing them, and really even just recognizing what the heck is going on in order to really embrace them. So, yeah, I'm really, really blessed with that kind of perspective because a lot of times what I'll do with an animal now when I'm approaching a animal communication session is I'll do a body scan. I was taught this in one of my classes is to just do a scan. Let's see how the different bodies are. Let's see if there's a physical issue, emotional issue. And that's when I'll notice things. One common thing I'll pick up on too is nausea. Sometimes I'll feel nauseous, sometimes I'll feel hungry or different things like that. But the most common thing I'll feel is nausea, especially when we're talking with some cats who've been having kind of some hairballs. And that's an interesting feeling.
Absolutely. And I have that come up a lot as well, but it's interesting because I feel anxiety in my stomach. So sometimes it could be anxiety, but it could lead toward being a little bit nauseous. And so I've learned to feel into that a little bit. And sometimes I will just say it could be this or it could be that. Also, sometimes that anxiety is coming from the person who has asked for an animal reading. So they may be anxious leading up to the session, worried about what might come up, or worried that there will be some bad news that the animal has. And so I often check in with the person as well. And I might just ask them, were you feeling anxious or having any kind of feelings before we started? Because sometimes just preparing for the session, these things start to come up. Often if I have some nauseous feelings, it will come in the beginning when I'm doing my meditation.
Oh, that is so true. That is really true. I need to look into that a little bit more too. And I love too that animals can sometimes be our mirrors, like we've talked about before. And I think a lot of times, or sometimes our animals may be highlighting, that anxiety that their owner is feeling, or something that's going on, or just kind of letting us know, or maybe we're just kind of picking up on both aspects because again it's a communication, it's a three-way communication process. So I think that's really important how you talked about is understanding our own body and understanding how we get information, because not only understanding what that information is but how we incorporate it into our body and how we feel it. Like you said, sometimes it could be anxiety, it could be nausea, we can be picking up on certain pains, and just knowing kind of what is going on, and honoring that, like, okay, that's coming from the person, that could be coming from the animal. And I think that really comes a lot with practice.
Well, that's also where these readings can be kind of like charades,
Yes.
because we're trying to figure out what we're feeling and also trying to figure out where it's coming from and trying to figure out what it means. So there's a lot of different things going on. And I have another story where I often get questions about health. And I am not a veterinarian. The answer is always, if you have a question, you should go to a vet, get
Number
it
one.
checked out.
Yes.
But I can get the level of pain.
Hmm.
So they'll often let me know, it doesn't hurt that bad, or it's bad. So kind of just a range there, or I get directed to a certain part of the body. So
Yes.
I may not know what's wrong. I also think that just like people, if you ask an animal, they might say, I don't feel good, but they don't know what it is. Yeah, an animal can't say, oh, I've got a bladder infection,
Right.
because they don't know. So that's another thing that, when I'm asking the animal, they can't tell me something that they don't necessarily know the answer to. But I had one example where someone just asked me to do a general, how is their health? And I had a sore spot on my left side. It felt like a pulled muscle.
Mm.
And so I asked, basically, I say, this is what I'm feeling. And they said, well, he just had a tumor removed from the left side of his mouth. So I knew that this was coming from the animal because it was the left side. And that told me, because it was sore, because it felt to me like a sore muscle, that it was sore but not painful. So it does take some, it's not exact. You know, in our bodies, we're not going to feel necessarily the exact same thing that the animal feels, but they can use our bodies to direct us to the right place. The other thing was, this animal was telling me that he could still eat, and they validated that he could eat okay. So that helps us trust, yes, it's sore, but he's doing all right. So it's kind of interesting how it all plays together. If you haven't had an animal communication reading, there's lots of different layers and different things that can come out.
100%. Oh my gosh. And you brought up a couple really great points. The first one is, yeah, they don't often know. A lot of times people, will ask me also what the health is, or, how am I feeling? And I'll be like, "Well, I'm a little nauseous," or, "Okay, my stomach feels here, but I'm not hungry." Or, "Yeah, I'm still hungry, but I'm still feeling nauseous." And so it's kind of, or this general area is kind of bothering me.
Mhm.
So sometimes I'll be able to feel it exactly, and sometimes like you said, the animal doesn't know what's going on. So, for some reason, I had one lab that came through, and it was kind of funny because he also knew that I'm a PT and I have studied some canine PT. He's like, nope, I stifle is okay, and it was kind of funny because he was going through some stifle issues, but he just wanted, nope, I'm okay, I'm okay. So it's kind of funny is that sometimes they will not hide what's going on, but also not fully understand what's going on either with their
Mhm.
body, or kind of the coming from a different aspect. Because I think they also don't want their owners to be completely concerned, or to be really to know, not that they don't want them to know, but they don't want to dive into that kind of stuff sometimes. They want to portray, oh, nope, I'm fine. Especially like with horses, they're prey animals. So sometimes, during a reading, like you said, the readings can be very dynamic. When you first get into a reading, or when I'm first connecting with a prey animal, they're like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. See, I'm good. And then you dive into it a little bit more. It's like, oh yeah, you're not as good as you let on at the beginning. So
I find that a lot. The animals don't want to admit they're in pain. And it's usually because they don't want their people to feel bad. They don't want them to worry. It's more about the emotional effect that it has on the people around them. And another thing is that they will often be very focused on one particular thing. So I talked to a rescue dog, it's a dachshund, and they had just brought her in. They were trying to figure out what her background was and what was going on, which I love this idea for working with rescues because often we don't have any information about them. She had a lot of health issues. And when I checked in with her, I felt so itchy. I could feel it in my neck, on my back. Almost now, just thinking about it, I can feel it. I was just like, I itched so badly. And she had some other issues, like her eyesight. She had really poor eyesight and couldn't see very well at all. But that didn't come up in my reading. So I feel like either the itching was worse and that it really needed to be addressed first, and that was the main focus, or just that she couldn't focus on anything else. She was so itchy that the other things became less important. So in a reading, we may not get everything. Yeah, and I think that's important for people to realize. Um, Afterwards, I felt kind of bad. I thought, oh, I should have known. I actually did a reading one time with a dog that was completely blind. And the owner never told me that until I said, "Oh, he's talking about looking out the window." And she said, "Well, he's blind." And I felt like it was kind of a test to see if I would get that.
Yeah.
And there's a few different things about that that an animal can be remembering when they could see, um, or they don't see it as a weakness,
Right.
that they still that they can imagine things. So there can be lots of different reasons why that comes up. And again, we just have to keep working through the process during a reading.
I love how you just said don't see it as a weakness because that's really important. I did a reading for a horse that I also want to mention about charades. She kind of took me through her own little charades, which was I loved it. But not seeing their issues as a weakness is huge. Speaking as a healer, especially a Reiki person, um, animals don't want to be seen as, as their problem. And sometimes they don't, I've done both a reading with a rescue dog and this one horse who she's an older mare. She's got a lot of health issues going on, and her caregiver is very concerned about all of these issues. But her caregiver is doing the exact right thing. She's working with her vet, she's working with a local body worker, she's, doing the whole homeopathic route as well as she's doing everything she can, and almost to a detriment of the not a detriment, but the horse was like, I'm okay, yes, and I felt all the different feelings, but I guess the best way to explain it to you is it felt like a back seat. It felt like not as strong. It's like, yeah, we've got this, yeah, we've got this, yeah, we've got this, but this is still a beautiful being, and that's what she wants you to focus on. She doesn't want you to focus on all of these things. She wants you to focus on here and now, because a lot of times, and I'm a helicopter mom and a half. I just had a huge, my vet was just making fun of me today with my horses. Um, but a lot of times that can kind of get us in tunnel vision. And what's important for our animals is the quality time, is that love, and to see them as the light that they really are. So, like you mentioned about the blind dog, maybe he was actually seen in his own way, because we know how our senses work, but animals communicate with us in all different kinds of ways. The caregiver may not have realized when that dog went blind, that caregiver, like you said, the dog may have been imagining things. And so don't put weaknesses, on the animals, is what I encourage for people. Don't put your limitations, yeah, my own personal 30 something year old horse still is kicking up and having all sorts of fun out in the pasture. And sometimes I'll go in there and I'm like, okay, well, you can't do this, this and that. And he's like, the heck, I can't do that. I'm okay, we'll deal with it. And so I just really want to, I love, like I said, how you put don't see it as a weakness, because sometimes it is stuff we need to address, but sometimes it's just stuff to be aware of and not focused on.
Right. I recently talked to a dog who is getting older, and her body is not working the way that it used to. And she kind of said, "I don't want you to see me like this. Like,
Exactly.
don't treat me any differently. I just want
Exactly.
you to remember me the way that I used to be." And I feel like that will probably happen to all of us as we get older. That we just are not as mobile as we were once. So
Yes.
I in any case, any situation, I think our animals just want us to remember all the good times.
100%.
Even if they
100%.
can't run anymore, they want to remember and remind us of when they could run.
And to value the time that they have now. I did a reading for another animal who is kind of going through the next stage, and the caregiver's worried, and rightly so, but realize that this is also a beautiful part. Like you said, even we're going through changes. So it's just kind of being aware and honoring that. But I wanted to mention before I forget the charades, because I think that is really key. I had did a reading with this older horse, and she has some itchy. She had a lot of itchy skin. She also is having some issues with kind of it just some female issues that was infected, and so the caregiver was actually, I am not lying to you guys, had to milk her horse. I had to stop. I was like, you're milking your horse? But the caregiver had to milk her horse, and we talked about it. But what the charades came in is that I started feeling nauseous. I really just started feeling I'm going to say gassy, not to get too TMI, but I was just feeling like I just had to burp, like acid reflux, is what I feel like. And I was talking to the caregiver. I was like, no, your horse is not gassy. Gassy usually it's colic. Horses can't burp. So when we're
Mm.
talking gas, that means colic. It's like, nope, that's not what's going on. And we were like, well, is it, the caregiver was like, well, is it an ulcer? I was like, nope, nope, I'm still feeling, but, long story short, TMI, I know y'all, but what I like to do is rub my stomach. And sometimes I'll use a lot of kind of just rubbing or patting my stomach to make myself feel better when I'm dealing with some acid reflux. And that's what the horse was showing me. She's like, how you're rubbing your stomach and doing that? That's, and so long story short, she wanted to just give gratitude and to honor the caregivers, hands on her stomach was really making her feel better. And so that nagging feeling, because we were talking and trying to figure it out, and that I still had that nagging feel like, nope, that's not it, nope, it's not an ulcer, and I couldn't let it go either. And it took a little bit of time to figure out what it was. So it's definitely a charades, because animals, they use any way they can to communicate with us, and sometimes it's kind of interesting, the symbols and the things they'll have us feel too, or what we'll feel to kind of connect and get to the message.
That's right. I always say animals are always communicating, they just don't use words, right? So they don't have the same vocabulary that we do. So they communicate any way they can. And it's an adventure. But also anything is possible. You never know what they're going to say. I've heard some funny things from animals that I didn't expect.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said, they're going to use any way they can. It's the intent. It's the intent and it's the message. Because really at the end of the day, they do want to communicate with you. They have messages, and like with this one horse, they have moments of gratitude that they wanted to express, and they will find any way that they can to help us express that for their caregiver. And so, like we talked about, it's important to know how you receive information and how to process that information, and why, and while everybody can communicate with their animals, it takes practice and kind of understanding the different ways, because not two, no two animals will communicate the same way either. One animal will use certain symbols, another animal may say, nope, I'm going to use words. So it's how they feel it's easiest to get their message across.
Right. So if any of you would like to find out what your animal has to say, any messages or how they might be feeling in their body, you can get a reading with either one of us. I also do individual teaching if you'd like to just learn how to talk to your animal yourself. So you can find me at intuitivedenise.com.
Awesome.
And
Yep. And I'm at magicallyaligned.com, and I will be offering classes this spring, both animal communication and Reiki classes if you're curious about diving into those. And I will be posting both of our informations below. Have a good one, y'all. We'll see you next week.
thanks.
Thank you, Denise.